Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. Today's video I am here with my two iconic bikes, the XRV 750 Africa Twin and the Transalp 700, which I have owned for quite a while now. Today's video I am going to be comparing these two bikes, let you know exactly the pros and the cons of each one of them, how do they differ between each other, and at the end of the video let you know exactly which bike do I think is a better bike in my opinion. So if you have nothing to do, stay with me and let's find out. All right everybody, so before we go ahead and let you know exactly what I think between these two bikes, let's just get something out of the way here. First of all, both of these bikes are great bikes to have. I have owned this bike for a long time, as I said. Have no regrets getting this bike. This bike as well is a really good bike. But of course, there's no unicorn bike out there, so you gotta compromise. There are things that the need of these bikes can do, and there are things that one of these bikes can do better than the other, but at the end of the day, they don't do everything 100%, so that's what you need to compromise. Best thing to do is to find out what kind of rider are you, what you want to do with the bike, what you want the bike to be able to do for you, and what kind of terrain you want it to ride. Do you want to ride long distance? Do you want to be in comfort? Do you want to go off-road? And then decide which bike you're going to get. Of course, you got to compromise because no bike is perfect. All right, so let me give you a tour around the bike so you can see. We're going to start with the Transalp. As I say, it's a 17.5 liter tank, about 150-160 miles per tank, and depends how you ride it. It's a dual calipers in the front, as I said. It's a 19 front wheel, and it's a 214 kilograms of weight. It's a drive chain. The back wheel is a 17-inch back wheel. The ABS, as I say, doesn't allow you to turn it off. You have spoke wheels, and this bike is running on the Meters Euro 7 Plus in the back and the Euro 7 in the front. Single headlight in the front, and that this one has a few upgrades, so if you haven't seen the video that I showed with the upgrades, have a look there. But you got a taller screen, you got an SW Tech handle guards, off-road levers and the foot pegs and things like that. This one is a 2013 bike, and it has about 20,000 miles on it already. Here we have the Africa Twin. That's the RD07 1997. It's a dual caliper in the front, dual discs. It's a 21 front wheel in the front and 17 in the back, and 23 liter tank. It covers about 200 plus miles in a tank. I haven't actually done more than that, but I've done 200 miles, and I had no I didn't have to switch to the reserve. By the way, the Transalp has no reserve that you can switch on or off, and this one is a carbureted bike. The Transalp is a fuel injection. There's no ABS on this. The dashboard is quite 80s or 90s, so you get your speedometer, your tachometer, and temperature gauge, and your buttons here for neutral, oil, turn signals, high beam, and etc. The trip meter here, or the mileage display, and the fuel, and we have the tachometer here, and your buttons on the side. So even though they look very alike in some ways, they differ a little bit, and also they feel different. Let's start with the Transalp and let's talk about what's the good things about this bike that I know. And one of the things I find about this bike is how comfort this bike is. The seat, as you can see, is a very wild seat and really comfort. You can ride many miles on this bike without actually even stop. Of course, you gotta stop for petrol, but you can ride for hours and hours. It's such a good bike on the pavement, on the twists. It really does really well on the pavement, and I think this is because of the 19 front wheel, and the profile of the front wheel is thicker than the XRV. It has such a great response, great torque, and it has enough power. And we're going to talk about a little bit more the power in a few minutes, but it has enough power. It's a 5-gear bike. Both of them are 5-gear, and yeah, it could benefit with the 6-gear, but you're only going to find out that like once you start adding luggage and the pillion passenger. But if you're riding solo, you won't feel that much. It has a great torque for passing slow vehicles, and that's one of the main benefits about this bike. It's such a great bike for that. The weight is, as I say, is 214 kg. That's a weight without adding any other accessories like crash bars or bash plates, things like that. So I presume that with all of that, after you adding all that, plus your tools and bags, you're talking about like a bike that's going to be 200 and probably 30 kg, 225 or something like that. The riding position to this bike is very good. It is not a tall seat, it's a medium seat high. The seat's not adjustable, so but it feels a little bit higher because of the thickness of the seat. So that's one thing you find. As I say, it is a heavy bike, but once you're on the road and you're moving, you don't find it. The only way you're going to find it that's actually very awkward is when you try to moving out of the garage or slow turns or things like that, that you're going to find this bike is a bit heavy. On the motorway, that's a benefit. It can keep up with the traffic, and also he actually, especially here in Ireland where the wind is a lot, it's a very stable bike on the motorway. You can add accessories like I've done here for luggage, for back box and the tank bag, and it's a great tourer bike. I think the Transalp 700 did got a big modification from the previous versions of it, where he lost a little bit of the off-road capability, and he went more into a tour adventure bike. So that's what this bike is all about. Let's now talk about like the downsides of this bike, things that I don't like. One of the things that I don't like about this bike is the weight. That's the main thing about this is the weight of this bike. It's quite heavy, and even though for me it's not a taller bike, but I'm 5'11", and if you actually lesser than that, you're gonna find it it's a top heavy bike. But again, as I say, when you're moving, you don't feel that much. But for a bike that's capable to be off-road, it is a heavy bike to take off-road, and that's one of the downsides of this bike. Also because the 19 front wheel, because it has a 19 front wheel and the profile of the wheel is actually thicker, it feels much planted to the ground, which is a good thing in the pavement, but again is a bad thing when you go off-road, because of the bike, it doesn't cut through gravel or stones as easy as if it was a 19 front wheel. The ground clearance of this bike is not that bad, but again is lower than the XRV because of the 19 front wheel and the travels of the forks. Regarding the power of this bike, I think it is adequate power for a person that is riding alone and has light gear on it. Once you start actually trying to take a pillion passenger, then you're going to feel that the power is still, the power is not enough, and this fifth gear makes this bike a bit to struggle a bit on the motorway or going up hills. Besides that, I don't see any other issues with this bike. I think if the weight was lesser and 21 front wheel and a bit of more power would be a great bike for both off-road and up the pavement. All right, so let's say the Africa Twin now and see what the good things about this bike and how this bike compares with the Transalp. First of all, we have a 21 front wheel, a bit more ground clearance and a taller bike with the more range, 200 miles plus, bigger tank, 23 liter, and a lighter bike than the Transalp. The weight of this bike, it doesn't seem that much difference between one and the other. Is 214 against 207, something like 204. But what I noticed about this bike is how nimble and agile this bike is to ride. I think one of the reasons is because of the 21 front wheel makes the bike much agile than the Transalp. It's not as planted on the ground as the Transalp, but yeah, it is a bike that like feels lighter, even though there's not much difference between one and the other. One of the things I like about this bike is the torque. It has more torque than the Transalp, and it has more power than the Transalp. Not that much power per standards of today's standards, but yeah, you can feel the difference between one and the other. It's a 5-gear bike again, and there is no ABS on this, as I said. One of the things I like about this bike is the fact that it's such an easy bike to ride and it's such an easy bike to take off-road. For some reason, I think it's because of the front wheel, as I say, and it makes you more confident to take the bike off-road. And but again, yeah, there are a few things that I don't like about that. One of the things is when you go in the slow traffic, the handlebars feel a bit vague. Something that I don't find in the Transalp at all. The Transalp is very stable, very planted to the ground, as I said. This one on the slow riding feels a bit like a vague, but that's because of the tires that I'm running, which is Meteor 7, the profile of the tire, and that's probably what it is. So on one side we got the Transalp with with the 19 front wheel against the 21 front wheel of the Africa Twin. We have more ground clearance on the Africa Twin than less on the Transalp. We have a more petrol 23-liter tank on the Africa Twin against 17.5 from the Transalp. The seat is higher on the Transalp, on the Africa Twin, and lower on the Transalp. The riding position is better on the Africa Twin. Is okay on the Transalp, and the bike weight is lesser on the Africa Twin, and it feels more nimble. So again, so what's the verdict here? It all depends. Both the bikes are great bikes. The Africa Twin is not as good on the twisters as the Transalp is. It can do long riding, but it's not as comfortable. On the slow riding, it feels a bit vague. The wheel on the front feel a bit, the handlebars feel a bit vague. The Transalp, you don't get that. It's more stable. So knowing all of that, which bike do I think is a better bike in my opinion? Well, I think both the bikes are great, as I say. You won't go wrong with neither of these bikes. It all depends on what you want to do. If you are the type of rider that's going to spend most of the time on the pavement and occasionally go off-road, do some light off-roading, then the Transalp is a great bike. If you like comfort, if you like riding for many miles, if you want something that's not tall, and then the Transalp is a bike for you. On the other hand, if you think that you are going to spend a bit more time on the off-road, less time in the pavement, or 50-50, or you wanted to explore, you wanted to be more confident off-road, then the XRV 750 is the bike for you. Again, you need to take in consideration that it's a taller bike, and also you need to take consideration that it's not a light bike per se. It's not a dual sport bike. You know, both of these bikes are heavy, so you just need to understand that. But which one I think is better off-road? The XRV is better off-road than the Transalp. Which do I think is better on the pavement? The Transalp is better on the pavement than the XRV. So it all depends on what you wanted to do. In my opinion, for me, I want the bike to do 50-50. I want to be on the pavement, to ride long miles, and also be able to take the bike off-road with more confidence. So for me, the XRV is a bike that I think is a better bike here. But again, is that because I wanted to do that. If that's not your case, then either of these bikes will be good for you. So yeah, there you go. So let me know exactly what you think, and let me know if I missed anything. And doesn't matter which bike you think you're gonna get. Both these bikes are great bikes to have. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.